right, here we go. Total weight, 6.01 pounds, Matt. Thanks for being here. Come back again, all right?
So day 3 was a huge day for me. I had an opportunity to get a check in this tournament. This is the biggest tournament I've fished in my life, and I really wanted to do well. And based on how I did the first 2 days, I put myself in a position to cash a check and to have a good finish. Day 3 traditionally is a grind. The lake's been beat up for days and days and days with practice in the first 2 days of the tournament. I knew it was going to be a grind. My goal on day 3 was just a limit. I didn't care if they were 5, 13-inch fish. I was just praying to get a limit because I felt that if I got a limit, I would cash a check. I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach day 3 because I knew people were running my pattern up in Greg's Basin from day 1, and my area in Overton didn't produce on day 2. The only thing I knew I was going to do was go back into Benelli Bay in the morning and try to catch some more of those fish that I've been catching the first 2 days. My day 3 co-angler was Gary Cruz. He was fun to fish with, had a lot of fun on the boat that day, and it was a pleasure to have him on my boat. So going into day 3, I was in 20th place. The flights that we were going out in the morning were based upon your placing going into day 3, and since I was in 20th place, that put me in the second to last flight. So I decided to go right to Benelli Bay first thing in the morning, just like I had the first 2 days. We come up to our first spot, and I'm throwing a chatterbait in there, and I get bit on my first few casts, and I catch the fish, I get in the boat, and as I'm looking down the water, there's another fish with it. I try to get my co-angler to throw in there to catch that fish too, and we would have had 2 fish right off the bat on our first spot, first area. It would have been a great start to the day. My co-angler wasn't able to catch that one right off the bat, but as we're a couple minutes later, we're continuing to fish, and he's casting around. He's throwing a jerkbait, a hard jerkbait around, ends up catching a fish, another keeper. We got 2 keepers in the boat first thing in the morning. We were both super pumped. As we were fishing around Benelli, we were able to get other bites, but we just couldn't get keeper bites. So we decided to leave, and my decision was to go all the way back into Greg's and fish some of the areas I had on day 1 to see if I could catch some more fish up there. So I started fishing some of the areas that I'd gotten bit in practice and on day 1, but I could not get bit in those areas. So I decided to abandon it. I went and found some areas that were similar to what I was fishing in Overton on day 2 and when I got bit in practice. So I started throwing a jig on some steep rocky banks in Greg's, and sure enough, I was able to get bit on the jig, caught some short fish, and then I was able to catch 2 more keepers throwing the jig on the steep rocky banks. So now I had 4 fish in the boat, and I was super pumped. Being that second to last flight, we had a late weigh-in. We had plenty of time to try to get 1 more fish in the boat to round out our limit, and that would have made me feel much more comfortable going to the weigh-in with my odds of cashing a check. So even though we had plenty of time to get that last and 5th fish for our limit on day 3, we weren't able to do it, so we had to go to the scales with only 4 fish. The weight of those 4 fish went 601. That put me into 38th place, just barely within check range, and I was able to cash my first check at a Pro-Am event. The fishing was tough. It's a grind of an event, but I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I was fortunate enough to do well and cash a check, and I'm super pumped about how the tournament went, especially when I didn't know what to expect after my practice.
All right, here we go. Total weight, 6.01 pounds, Matt. Thanks for being here. Come back again, all right?
So my 3-day total for the event was 25.23. That's just a little bit above the 8-pound average that I was shooting for going into the event. That 8-pound average would have been just shy of cashing a check, so having that good day on day 2 really helped me and put me in a position to do well in this tournament. Big congratulations to Justin Patty for winning it wire to wire. He totally jacked him up out there. Got to give a big shout out and a big thanks to all 3 of my co-anglers, Mona, Larry, and Gary. I couldn't have had the same tournament without them. They helped me big time, whether it was netting fish or catching fish and putting fish in the boat. I couldn't have had the same outcome without them. So big thanks to all 3 of my co-anglers.